Welcome to Two Bees in a Pod. I am Bilala.
And I am B. Leonga, and this is a podcast about immigrant experiences in the U.S., sharing our perspectives on various topics,
including straddling cultures, fitting in, staying connected, learning and unlearning the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Thank you for joining another episode of Two Bees in a Pod. Our guest today is Dr. Sirry Alang, and she is a health services researcher and medical sociologist with a PhD from the Division of Health Policy and Management at the University of Minnesota School of Public Health. She is a tenured associate professor of Black communities and the social determinants of health at the University of Pittsburgh School of Education, where she also serves as associate dean for equity and justice. And thank you so much, Sirry, for joining us. It's really an honor to have you here to talk about everything that we're about to talk about in honor of Pride Month, but also just because it's a very important conversation that our community needs to have. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I've enjoyed your podcast. So thank you for doing it.
Awesome. And before we get into the podcast discussion, for our audience, if you want to learn more about Dr. Sirry and her work, including, academic publications, you can check out sirryalang.com. All right. So we're going to start with a little icebreaker like we usually do. So the question today is, what do you miss most about your hometown?
What do I miss most about my hometown? Bamenda is like home. So I think I miss when I can just walk up to the street and buy puff puff. Like, just that simple. Like, just walk up to the street, say hello to people, buy puff puff, chat with people, come back home. I really miss that.
I feel you on that one. Yeah. What about you, Bilala?
I really like Siri. I agree with you. There are many a time I get really frustrated when I want puff puff and I have to do labor. Like, just being able to go to the road and buy puff puff for 100 is yeah. I can't even explain. What I miss most about my hometown, and I would say I consider Douala my hometown because I grew up in Douala, is the smell and the rude people.
Why would you miss the smell and the rude people?
It's a very particular. The only way I can say it is one of the reasons I love New Orleans is it has the same pungent, humid smell at night that transports me back to Douala. And it's a very strange thing, right? Or just like I said, the rudeness, arguing with random people, taxi drivers, Benskin drivers. It's that is when I think about Douala, that's really something that I think. Just being able to insult people, which is probably why I'm always insulting people when I'm driving and I insult them in French, because all habits die hard.
Yeah.
I hear about New Orleans, like it smells like you can smell the gutter when you're there. Don't know if it's because like they have standing water or what, but I know the smell that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what I miss most about my hometown, I'm from Limbe, so I mean I would have to say the beach. Yeah, the beaches undefeated. Limbe beaches and Limbe sunsets undefeated in my opinion. Yeah. That's what I miss most. So, Sirry, can you tell us a little bit about, your upbringing? Obviously, you said your hometown is Bamenda. So tell us, what it was like growing up there. Where did you go to primary school, secondary school?
Okay. Bamenda remains undefeated. This that's going on.
I
It's
agree.
still amazing. Thank you.
No, I love Bamenda. I love Bamenda too. I haven't been there forever.
It's just, I mean, part of it is that's where I spent my entire life. And so I was born in Bamenda and I grew up in Damukong Street,
Okay.
right to Nkwen, Bamenda, that area in Damukong Street. In fact, there's a club, there's an organization called Damukong Pikin. I actually have a t-shirt in the US that I wear that has Damukong Pikin on the back of it. That's how connected to Damukong Street I am. So I grew up in Bamenda and I did my K through 12 of nursery, primary, secondary, and high school. In Bamenda, I don't know if my nursery school still exists. It was on Sonak Street. It was called Givichi International Nursery.
There.
Yeah, like on Sonak Street. That's where I went to nursery school, and I have some memories, some really good memories from there. But but I also have like a couple of traumatic memories from there when my mom forgot to pick me up from nursery school, and I was like crying. I remember that I actually still tease her about that. Like, you remember that time that you forgot to pick me up from nursery school? But so I went to nursery school there, and then I went to primary school, government bilingual primary school, Old Town in Bamenda. That was my primary school. There were two primary schools. There was the like primary school, and then there was the Arabic primary school in Old Town that was in the quote unquote Hausa quarter in Old Town. I went to the non-Arabic primary school. If I think about it now, I probably should have gone to the Arabic primary school because it would be really cool if I could speak Arabic. But
Right.
like at that time, you don't know how like useful those second like languages are. And then in those days, like common entrance was in class 7, so I was one of the people that wrote my common entrance in class 6 because I kind of moved through school really quickly. Like I spoke really early, maybe even before 2. Like I just talked a lot as a kid, which I'm now a professor, which means I still talk a lot. But I but I spoke a lot, and so I like moved through school pretty quickly because I talk a lot. And sometimes people think that when you talk a lot, you're smart, but it's really, you just talk a lot. That's what it is. So, so I talk a lot. I did my common entrance in class 6. Most people did in class 7. My mom used to teach at GBHS Bamenda, Cameroon Bamenda. So that's where I went to school, secondary and high school. So I was 7 years, 1991 to 1998 in GBHS Bamenda. And then after GBHS Bamenda, I went to the University of Buea. I actually really didn't want to go to university. And I remember sitting outside with my aunt who died 99, and she's like, the cool auntie that you have in the family, you like to take all of her old clothes because they are really good. She doesn't yell at you or beat you, like that kind of auntie. And she had gone to ENS, and she was a secondary school teacher. My mom was a secondary school teacher. I just thought that that's what, I wanted to do. Plus, I would remain in Bamenda. I would go to ENS Bambili, but I would kind of remain in Bamenda. It would be really close. And I remember right around when we were writing GCE A levels that I told my mom, like, oh, I really don't want to go to university. My older brother was at the University of Buea at the time. I said, I don't really want to go to university. And she said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'll go to ENS Bambili, and then I'll teach like in GBHS Bamenda or like wherever. And I remember my mom looking at me and saying, no, we already did that. We want something more for you. We want something better for you. And my aunt, who's like the coolest person, who just looked at me very categorically, like matter of factly, with this, like, I was afraid because of how she looked at me, and she just said, if you do not go to university, I will beat you, and I'm going to put pepper in your mouth and your eyes. And so that just scared me. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll go to university. And then, to think about how like I went to university like reluctantly because I didn't want to piss off my aunt, and because my mom just said, well, I want something better for you. And I took that seriously. And so I went to the University of Buea. My older brother was at UB. He was a biochemistry major, so I wanted to do something similar. I didn't quite like chemistry, so I thought I'll do microbiology. After the first 2 years at UB, I was like, I don't want to stay in UB. My father at the time lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and said, well, I don't want my child to go to university in Cameroon. She has to come to the US. So like, any other person with bush fallers fever, I left UB. I'm like, I'm not going to finish this degree. I'm going to go to the US. Of course, I didn't get a visa. Of course, it was just complicated. And I stayed out of university for a year. Then I went back and I finished, and then started over again because in the course of finishing the microbiology degree, I took an elective course in social work. But the University of Buea didn't have a social work program. But I went to the office and I said I wanted to now do a degree in social work. And somebody said, sociology and social work are the same thing, just do sociology. They are not the same thing. But I eventually enrolled in the sociology program and I enjoyed it. I felt like that was my intellectual home. And so I graduated from that program, and I still thought, this is it. I'm going to look for a job. But one thing led to the other. Some random white man who was a Peace Corps officer in Buea said, oh, you should apply for a master's degree at Lehigh University. You would be really good. And then I ran into him again in the taxi, and he's like, "Did you apply?" And I was like, "No." But that day I went to the, cyber cafes that were at in Boya at the time, and I looked up Lehigh University, and I told my brother, who at that time was now living in Kentucky, and I was like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna apply for a master's program in sociology at Lehigh." And he's like, "Yeah, you should apply to a series of programs, not just one." But I eventually applied. I got into Lehigh, and that's how I ended up, in the US, to do a master's degree at Lehigh. So that's kind of how, I mean, even when I was at Lehigh, I still thought after the master's degree, that would be it. I wasn't going to get a PhD or do any of that because it's silly. Why do that? All of the things. But after my master's degree, I kind of just like took off and went to Hawaii. I lived on Maui for a bit. And then I started teaching as an adjunct faculty member at Maui Community College, and it was nice. So I realized I wanted to be a university professor, and I needed a PhD, but I didn't want to do sociology anymore. I wanted to do something that relied on sort of the sociological theory that I'd learned that was more applied and practical. And I knew that public health was really what I had wanted to do, because when I graduated from UB, my first jobs were in like HIV prevention and stuff in Cameroon. So I kind of wanted to go into public health, and I ended up at the University of Minnesota. And then even during then, I still threatened to quit the PhD. In fact, I left and worked at the State Department of Health and at the Hennepin County, which is the county where Minneapolis is. I worked for their county Department of Health when I was supposed to be a PhD student doing the degree, because I just thought, once again, why am I doing this? Yeah. But one of my mentors at Lehigh University said, "You're really good at this, and you should go back and finish." And I took it seriously. I went back, and I also had actually really good mentors at the University of Minnesota. So I went back and I finished, and then I thought, I'm done with academia. I don't want to be in the academy anymore. I had a really good job at the county at the time, but I wanted a different job that I thought was really, really good. So I asked a mentor of mine to write a letter of recommendation for that job, and she said, "Well, if you just apply to this faculty job back at Lehigh University, then I'll write you a letter of recommendation for the other job." And I was like, "Okay, I'm already applying for jobs." And I did apply. I had a good Zoom interview with the Lehigh folks. And then when I went to the campus visit interview, it was really, really good. Lehigh had changed. There were just this many amazing young Black faculty members that I didn't see when I was a student there. And they were doing just a lot of like community-driven work that I thought was meaningful. And so then that's kind of how I ended back up in academia. I really still think of myself as a reluctant academic, and people who know me will tell you every day I threaten to leave, but I'm still here.
That's funny. I've been fighting your destiny.
Yeah, basically.
That's funny. That story you told about your mom leaving, forgetting to pick you up from nursery. So when I was in nursery, when I went to PNU Limbe, and Sonara had like a housing, area where the kids, they had a special school bus that would bring the kids to PNU, and pick them up. And like, I was so jealous of the kids that got to ride that school bus. So one day I just decided to follow my friend, like, and get on the bus with her.
No.
Yes. Go back home with her. I had a friend whose mom was supposed to pick me and my friend up from school. So her mom comes and it's like, "Where's Inanga?" Nobody knows where she has gone. And like, everybody's freaking out until, I don't know, I guess whenever I got to my friend's house, in Sonara, I think one of her parents eventually called my house and was just like, "Hey, FYI, your child is here." That's when they figured out that I had just like, I feel like I'm gonna go on that bus today, and I went. Yeah.
Kids who were forgotten at school in Cameroon. Siri, was there any teacher who waited for you? Because my cousins, this was PNU Bamenda.
Yeah.
My cousin, I think their dad forgot them at school. And for context, PNU Bamenda is in Tonfoncha streets. They lived in Station. So they were forgotten at school, and then it's like 6 p.m. when their mom got home and it's like, "Where are the kids?" And so she had to drive back down. But nobody stayed with them. Like,
the teachers just left.
Yeah. They locked the gates and left. And I feel like people do that in Cameroon quite often, where there are situations where, I think once it was like the British Council Library, and the parents forgot, and we were driving by and we saw the kids at the door. Like the library was closed.
And they were just standing there.
Yeah.
No, I remember the teacher, like the teacher waited with me for my mom and she didn't come. So she took me to her house. And then I don't know how my mom knew to go to her house or what. Like I don't know how the communication happened. But she took me to her house and there was rice and beans in her house. And rice and beans is still my favorite food. But I refused to eat in that woman's house. I refused to go inside of her house, outside on her veranda. And I held on to like a pillar and I was crying that I wanted my mom. I wanted my mom. I wanted my mom. And yeah. And my mom came and picked me up from there. I don't know how it happened.
Wow.
Did she ever explain to you how she forgot? She just got busy?
Yeah, she said she got busy. She was in a staff meeting at school at GBHS. And all of a sudden she looked at the time and she was like, oh my God. So she said she was driving like a crazy person and came to the school. I think somebody at the school said, this woman had taken me to her house.
That's hilarious. Okay, so in the course of your work, right, in public health, what's the most eye-opening or important finding that you've come across in your research?
It's really, I mean, I think it's, even though it's like, it's normal, like it's something that people would expect if you think about it, but it's not immediately like visible. So part of what I do, like I look at the impact of like structural violence, and this can include like policies that have, that cause stress, that harm people who are marginalized in different ways. And one of the things to me that is very eye-opening is that the things that we do to protect ourselves from different forms of marginalization or from discrimination or from, racism, homophobia, sexism, whatever the situation might be, that those things in and of themselves actually harm us. Like the constant sort of like vigilance, right? Like the constant, you're worried about, was this person rude to you because you're Black, or were they just having a bad day? Like the constant worry about that. And even sometimes responses to that, or the actions that we take, that we think we are protecting ourselves, the fact that we worry about that we even anticipate that, release stress hormones that harm our health, and that the impact of these stress hormones go across, like they transcend generations. Like we carry them in our bloodstream, we hand them over to our kids. And so it's not like, sometimes even just like it's like a catch-22, because you're trying to protect yourself and prepare yourself for discrimination. But that anticipation of it and that like worrying about it is also harmful, not just to your mental health, but your physical health as well, because it releases cortisol and other hormones that harm your body organs. To me, that is the most, it's sad, it's shocking, but it's shaped how I live my life, which is that I don't give a shit. Like, I really don't care. I just do whatever the hell I'm doing, and I'm not going to worry about, like, if you're discriminating against me, carry on. I just make the choice to not worry about that and to not have that kind of guide my life, even though my research is really about how to address that and how to think about the ways in which, we cope, the ways in which we can, I guess, inform, policies that minimize those kinds of stressors on our collective health.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought about it that way, like on an individual level. Like I knew, obviously, especially in the context of America, right? Like that racial trauma is kind of passed down generationally. But yeah, I didn't think about it like individually, just your hypervigilance is impacting you.
Yeah. Like I can speak to one, like anybody who knows me knows I do not sit with my back to the door at a restaurant. I don't know what I would do if it ever happened, but in my head, I have to see everybody who's coming in. I don't want to be caught by surprise if somebody's going to come shoot up the place. I try to sit facing the door and I try to check for where the nearest exit is when I get in.
Yeah. And imagine that, like that anxiety, and whenever the door opens and you check, like a friend of mine described it, and this is somebody that I like do work with. And I remember when I first met him, and they just described it as like, you've been bitten by a snake, or maybe you have not, but you know that a snake bites people. And every time you see an earthworm, every time you walk through grass, you worry, you have to look, you check. And that's stressful. Like, that's stressful. Every time you're like, what is that? Is that a snake? If it's a snake, is it a poisonous snake? Would it bite me? Is it fast? Is it slow? Like, that's That's how sort of the constant, like how we are stressed about the different ways in which we can get harmed. Like that's just how it harms our health without us knowing, because it's very normalized. It's like part of our day to day.
Okay, well, we invited Sirry here to talk about homophobia and attitudes towards LGBTQ people in the Cameroonian community, but I think just as a whole in general, especially amongst, African immigrants and, Africans at home. And Sirry, congratulations on your marriage, by the way.
Thank
You got married earlier this year, right? Congrats.
Yeah.
So you are obviously like in an openly, as the kids say, walawa relationship. You're openly queer.
What?
Bilola, please don't be making that face. Oh my God, Bilola, you embarrass me on this podcast.
I know what you're saying, but I did not know they pronounced it that way.
That's the pronunciation. Anyway, so I don't know if you are, typically in Cameroonian spaces here in the US, if you associate with a Cameroonian community, do you find that there is some, I don't know, have you faced like overt discrimination, or how do you navigate that, knowing that our community is relatively homophobic?
Yeah. And I like the use of relatively, because there are people that are really accepting. So it's been really interesting, and it's changed. I think my perspective in terms of how I interact with our community members has shifted over the years. But I've known for a long time, pretty much my entire life, that I'm gay. I think when I was 9, I had a sense of like that I was different. I didn't know what that difference was. But to me, it was when you're 9, 10, you're a girl child in Bamenda, you people interested in little boys in the neighborhood at the junction. I just simply wasn't. And then around when I was 13, I knew that I was interested in girls, but I didn't know that it meant that I was gay, or what that the language was for that. I just thought, I think about some of the people that I grew up with that I thought they were really attractive, that I thought if I were to get married, it would be them. So, but that was not what other girls that I was growing up with were saying. I knew in that sense that that was different. So probably at 13, I kind of knew. I think it took me 17 years after that I actually told my family that I was gay. So I'm 44 years old now. I was 13 when I was clear that I was interested in girls, whatever that meant. But it was around when I was 30 that I told my family. But I had told a lot of people before then, including some dude that I stood up at the altar. And I've talked about that on Lupita Nyong'o's podcast. I don't want to repeat that story here, but I stood up some dude. I had told him that I was gay, and he said, it doesn't matter, we can still get married, which is ridiculous. Why would you volunteer yourself to be the person that's married to a gay person that does not like you? But whatever. I had come out to a bunch of people. But I remember when I was 19, I think, I told the pastor, my family was pretty religious. Like my family was fundamentalist Pentecostal people. They take religion to a different level. I remember telling a pastor in Cameroon when I was 19 that that I like girls was the word that I used. And that was, I think I heard about the word homosexuality at 19 from him. And of course, it was something that God completely hates. He very specifically made me believe that God was a Christian. And I say that that God was a Christian, that the divine power of that was a Christian. And that Christianity had a sexual orientation, and that sexual orientation of Christianity was straight. And that I had to be straight. And then, I started coming out to close friends when I was in UB, in the University of Boya. Kind of, I remember when I went back again and told him, really seriously that I'm gay. He actually, and this is one of my strongest memories of Christianity in Cameroon, which is really sad, was that at the time he said, God's plan for me was to immediately quit. At the time I was 19, I was in University of Boya. That God's will for me was to immediately quit university and to marry a pastor who he had hand selected. He knew who that pastor was. And that should I disobey him, which amounted to disobeying God, I would not succeed in life. I would amount to nothing. When at the day that I defended my PhD, I was like, yo, I didn't amount to anything, and you're still a rapist. Because after that, he'd now tried to rape me.
Oh.
Exactly. He now tried to rape me, and I remember leaving his office when someone else knocked. So I've always thought about if this person didn't knock on that door to come in, and it kind of shook everything and gave me the opportunity to leave. But what would my story have been? That pastor to me is on, one end of the spectrum of Cameroonians.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like their response to when somebody comes out to them or when they find out that somebody is gay, which is that they want to rob you of your value, your agency, your dignity as a human being. Right? They become very manipulative and say all these things about you that make you seem less than. And on the one hand of that is the violence, like rape, the violence, like, people beating you up. There's a girl I went to high school with who was killed because she played football or soccer and she looked really masculine. And I remember I was at the University of Where when I found out that she had died.
Mm.
And I kind of investigated what had killed her. It was because they had suspected. This is just a suspicion. They had suspected that she was gay, and they beat her up. And even her family couldn't talk about why she was killed. Right? They kind of made up stories about that she stole somewhere. They made up stories to prevent, because even then, even in her death, they felt that talking about the fact that she was murdered out of homophobia would still have brought shame to them. So there's the violent people on the one hand, and then there are the people that are just ignorant and hateful, right? Ignorant in that you don't know enough, your world is really small, you think your mother's food is the best because you haven't traveled, you don't know anything, you don't know what you don't know. There's that group of people. That group of people, I'm like, you can be ignorant, but leave me alone. Don't have me deal with your ignorance. Then there are people who are curious. I actually really like these kinds of people. They ask a lot of questions. They'll ask you, so when did you know that you're gay? They'll ask you, and then they'll like try to figure out things in their own lives to see if it means that they are gay or straight, which, is, I always like,
You're gay.
like, does this mean this? Does this mean that?
Yes, you're gay. I'm just kidding.
I know. Like, if you're like trying to figure out your own life, like, you're part of the LGBTQ, like you're questioning, it's okay. And then there are people who are like tolerant. They're like, okay, as long as you don't talk about it, as long as my family was in that position for a while, as long as you don't talk about it, as long as, whatever, you're fine. And then there are people who are really, really affirming. And I've had encounters with a series of all of these people. My family right now, in the year of our Lord 2025, are affirming. The majority of them are affirming. They are just completely supportive. And I don't, in my wildest imagination, I did not think that would happen. I actually had planned to marry another gay man so that we could just,
Not a 11-day marriage. Come on. I support those, by the way.
I was like, you're gay. You don't want to be out to your family. I'm gay. I don't want to be out to my family. Let's just figure this shit out. Move on with our lives. People can live. That's what I had really, really planned to do. But, in 2011, I think, was, when I just was like, enough is enough. And I came out to my family. All of them at the same time. My dad had moved back to Cameroon at the time. My mom was in Cameroon. My older brother was in New Mexico at the time, I think. My younger brother in Cameroon, aunts and uncles. I wrote all of them letters. I mailed the letters to Cameroon, and then I wrote emails, and I told the people in Cameroon, once they had their physical letters, to let me know, so then I can send an email to the people that would read their emails before the
You
letters.
are so dramatic. Oh my God.
Extremely dramatic.
She was fed up. No, she was fed up with a sprinkle of razzle dazzle.
Not the handwritten letter.
That's how I came out to all of them. And then I had like really close Cameroonian friends who I hadn't come out to. But everybody that, like, most people who weren't Cameroonians, like, I'm like, okay, you're not Cameroonian, and my assumption is that you're not homophobic, which is actually wrong. But
Right.
like I came out to a bunch of other people along the way. But I remember coming out to my family and really close Cameroonian friends that I had in the US around the same time. And of course, it was a mixed reaction. My dad, kudos to him. He already knew because a friend of his had seen my Facebook. I was like putting my gay life on Facebook, blocking the people I wanted to block. My dad's friend who lived in New Jersey had seen my, like, my gay shenanigans on Facebook and told my dad. And my dad was like, well, she hasn't told me. And this uncle, told my dad that the day that she tells you you have one job, and that job is to be accepting and loving of your daughter, period, like
Mhm.
no other thing. And so when I told my dad was like, I was waiting for this day, and he demonstrated his, like, you're loved, I'm happy for you, thank you for telling me, I'm sorry that I didn't create an opportunity for you to tell, like the whole thing that they tell parents to tell their kids. And my dad was just like, very good. My mom, of course, was like, what did I do wrong? She
Oh
felt like,
boy.
like it was something that she did. My younger brother was like, we should pray about it. My older brother took like the Christian homophobia to a whole new level. He was sending me scriptures. My mom in Cameroon in 2011 looked up how do you support your gay child and got directed to PFLAG, and was actually sending information about PFLAG to my brother who lived in Kentucky, which pissed him off. He's like, I understand what PFLAG is. Don't be sending these things to me. But my mom, even in her like, days of like, I'm not sure what this is, her ignorance essentially, she still tried to figure out how to protect me. And some of that protection was grounded in love. A lot of it was, even though it was grounded in love, it was also grounded in homophobia, because she was worried about like, I don't want people to know about this, what will people say? And at the time I was engaged to my first wife, I was married to a woman before, which is another thing that surprises me, because when I see the homophobia coming up with my current relationship and with my current marriage, I'm like, where have these people been? They're like, I was married to a woman in 2012. It's all over my Facebook. Like the whole, like, this is not my first rodeo with public gayness as a
Mhm.
but my mom, 2011, now that was when I was engaged to my ex-wife. My mom was, I could tell she was just really having a hard time. But one day I called her and she was completely like, how is Kim doing? And just very like, said she accepted me. She wants me to be happy. I don't know if my mom remembers this. I should talk to her about it. But she told me twice that I asked her what changed, and she said she went to sleep. And I'm telling this story for your listeners who think that being gay is not, it's inconsistent, doesn't align with their Christian beliefs and whatnot. My mom is literally the most Christian person I know, and I'm a huge critic of Christians. But my mom is solid. Like, she's a person with integrity. This woman prays more than anybody that I know. And so my mom, said to me, like, I was praying and I was crying, and I got up at night and I was crying, and I said, why is my daughter this, God? Why wasn't I, why the one that had this problem? Why not putting it on me? And I'm like, what problem? But she was stressed out and she was praying, and she said, then she fell back to sleep, and then she got up because there was a light, just a bright light in her room. And in my mom's understanding, that light was God, that light was the Holy Spirit, that light, there was a bright light in her room. And the light said to her, do you remember when you first had this child? And I was difficult delivery when I was born. You remember when you had this child and what, like, you said when you held this kid in your hand and she was crying and she was alive? And my mom said that she should be healthy and that she should be happy in life. And that voice, that presence, that light said to her, so what is your problem? Why are you, like, what exactly is your problem now? Why are you not asleep? Why are you crying? Why are you sad? And my mom said immediately she just felt like a burden was lifted from her, and she felt like an idiot. Actually, she felt like, yeah, what is my problem? My child is happy, my child is healthy. What exactly is the problem? And there was a shift even in the kinds of questions that my mom would ask me, or the ways in which my mom would talk to me about anything in my life. And my mom she has just never been the same since then. She came and lived with me and my ex-wife in Pennsylvania, and I'm telling you, there was no shred of homophobia. And my mom treated her like you treat any other daughter-in-law. Why is there not enough meat in my food? This the same kinds of things that, like, it was not. She was completely just accepting. And then my mom came and she was like, I wanted to go to church. I took my mom to the gayest possible church that I know. And the next thing I know, my mom was friends with all of the queers, the trans women. It was one thing she said that has really, like, also sat with me, other than the fact that, like, she felt like she had prayed for my health and my happiness, and there was no reason for her to be sad about who I am. The other thing that she said that was really meaningful to me, the first day that she went to the church, I told her that this church caters to gay Christians, to LGBT Christians. I told her that you would see a lot of trans people. She had no idea what trans people meant or what that. I told her that the minister was a lesbian. She's married to a woman. I explained all of that to her. When my mom came home, my mom said this Holy Spirit that I felt in that church was not any different than the Holy Spirit that I felt in my church back in Bamenda or anywhere. It just meant so much to me. And so my family has mostly been really supportive. There are people who have not been. And again, that's I decided to kind of let that be. In terms of like friends in Cameroonian communities, I go to places, there are a lot of people that know that I'm out. They like invite me to their things. They show me respect. I give them the same respect and the same courtesy. They respect my family. I do the same. If you're going to send me a Christmas card, and that happened a lot when I was married before, and they'll send me a Christmas card and they'll just say Sirry instead of Sirry and Kim, and I'm like, it's not just Sirry that lives in this house. And then they'll be like, oh my God. And I would let them know that, those are the small acts of exclusion that actually really matter. And people who really care actually really, really like learn. Like our world and our upbringing is not all there is. And so people who like really want to learn do learn. So I've met some of the most accepting Cameroonians. I've also met tons of gay Cameroonians. And it's, to me, I started living my life when I came out, and it was painful. It was not, I wouldn't say that it was not painful. It was painful because I also lost a significant amount of people. Friends, families, the church community that was a big part of my life. They probably still think I'm crazy or whatever, but that's fine. But it was also really liberating and freeing. And I got to meet just so many amazing people from different countries, also from Cameroon, from different cultures, people that were not Christians, Muslim, Buddhists, that have been incredibly supportive and accepting. And I build community with those people. That's a long-winded answer.
No, I really do. And
that.
something that you said that stood out to me, because it's a conversation I've had over and over recently, is your dad saying, just being there and supporting you. Because I think that as parents, people might want to take the route of, what did I do, when your child makes a decision that you don't agree with. But I think that as a parent, your role is not to agree with every decision that your child makes. Your role as a parent is just to love your child wholly and completely. You might disagree with their choices, but your child should never ever doubt that you love them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like your child should never ever ever doubt that you love them, that you're there for them, and that your child has the right to happiness, the right to love, like everybody else. Like I don't, like, if you're not being harmed. Like I say the same thing about LGBT rights, like I say about abortion rights. Don't get an abortion if you don't believe it's something that, like, you don't believe in it, it's bad. Don't do it. If you don't believe that LGBT people have rights, should be married, should have jobs, should not be discriminated against, like, you're not, stay in the closet. Leave your closet alive. Nobody's going to come force you out of the closet. It's like, honestly, again, it doesn't take anything away from you, right? Like it really doesn't take anything away from you. And like the people in my life, family members who they're typically, their homophobia is kind of at a distance. Like they wouldn't say that when they see me or whatever. A couple of them have been bold enough to say that when they see me, but I feel like they miss out on my life. They miss out on the relationships that they could have with me and that I could have with them. And it's sad on both ends. But at the same time, there's a world out there of people that are supportive and that are caring, including my own family members and including other Cameroonians. So if your presence doesn't add to my life, your absence is really not going to be missed in that sense. So you do you, I do me.
I feel it. So have you traveled with your wife back to Cameroon?
Yes. I've traveled with my wife to Cameroon. We were in Cameroon in 2003. And it was good. I mean, I didn't do the thing where, like, of course, if I like ran into a police officer, I wouldn't know how. But I know you. I'll be like, you're my random friend, because I don't want to experience Cameroon prison or whatnot. But with my family members and friends, it's like, this is my wife. At the time we weren't married, but I just said, because when I start saying this is my partner, it becomes like partner what, and I don't like the ambiguity of that. So I just tell them that this is my wife, even though we weren't married, so that you understand what the relationship is about. And it was, it was fine. People hug her. People, there were a couple of aunties who, my cousin told me that, and auntie was like, I hear Siri bring madam, which was very interesting. And she came and told me that people are saying which one is Siri's madam. So I was like, would you let's go greet these aunties? And it was nice. My immediate family in Cameroon is supportive. My cousins, to my knowledge, are supportive. I have no idea what they say when we are gone, but to my knowledge, they are supportive.
Yeah.
Both of us with respect. We went to nightclubs in Cameroon as a couple. Nobody said anything because are they going to lose their business? Because nobody said anything.
They want that money.
I was anxious though. I was anxious, but I was there with my younger brother and his friends, and I was anxious. And Uju is like, "Why are you anxious? Like, money stops nonsense. You think that they are going to like, And my younger brother was like, "It's true. There's no way." Instead, they were trying to like, call over our names in songs. The DJ was like, "Madame Siri and Madame Uju dans la maison." Like the DJ was, trying to get us to come and parote him. I don't know what he was trying to do, but yeah, it was, and I remember that moment. It was just really cool to be in the nightclub in Yaoundé, and just having fun. Like the straight people were having fun, we were having fun, and it was fine. This is not to say, don't, as a listener, don't go and be open in the night and say Siri said, because they arrest your ass. I'm very far away. So I'm just going to say that, like, sadly, very sadly, status, money, those kinds of things protect people from homophobia in Cameroon, but also in the US. I've seen that.
Mhm.
I've seen that people would be homophobic and then figure out what I do or live where I live or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's like they kind of start taking that back, which is really sad because you don't have to figure out a person's status to offer them the basic respect that you'd offer. But that's very common. That's a very common thing in Cameroon. But I always said to Uju that if like a police officer pulls us over, or if like somebody that I kind of, and I, as a masculine leaning gay person, senses are so like hyper developed. Like Uju can easily pass as a straight person, but I cannot pass as a straight person as easily as she does. So I'm extremely sensitive when we are in Cameroon or we are anywhere that there are actually homophobic laws in the book. So I'm like really very sensitive to that, and I've told her that I will deny you like Peter denied Jesus to save my life.
I mean, it's true though. It's facts.
That's real. That's
facts.
real. Did you guys go to, where did you go when you went to Cameroon? Yaoundé, anywhere else?
No, we just were in Yaoundé because my family now lives in Yaoundé because of the instability in Bamenda. So we really just stayed in Yaoundé, and we kind of just spent time in and around.
Nice. So I'm glad that you guys had a good time. That's fun. To your point about like this is the thing that I've noticed, at least in America, maybe it's different in Cameroon. To your point, people will hardly say something to your face. You know what I mean? So you can be homophobic. I bet you won't say that shit to my face. I bet you won't. You know? Type away.
Yeah.
Exactly. You could. My mom, we had this big ceremony for my mom in Yaoundé, and they were like these pastors who I knew were homophobic. One of the pastors, when I first came out, I specifically said to my mom and the rest of my family members in that dramatic letter that I wrote to everybody, I said, if you have any questions, ask me. Do not ask the pastor. Do not talk to me directly. And I actually said, a lot of gay people come out, and based on their family reactions, they cut ties with their family. And I said, I don't want to do that. I want to spend time with you and have the conversations with you because it has taken me so much time to process where I am at right now. You're just finding this out. My mom immediately went to the pastor. And the next thing I know, the pastor emailed me and was like, I want to talk about this, and had a list of questions. The first question was like, if you're gay, how are you having sex with a woman? And I remember telling them, like, what do you do? What goes where? Like, he was very specific. And I told him that, look, I'm not going to satisfy his sexual fantasies. He can look that up.
Pornhub, sir. It's available.
Yeah, so that pastor was in Yaoundé at my mom's like event, sitting there, and I was like, he's not going to, like, I was the person doing the event. Uju was there. We made a whole grand entrance because we are dramatic. But he was sitting right there. He didn't leave. I guess his free top pamplemousse was very good, and he was like, I'm gonna sit here and enjoy it. But he didn't say anything to me. Like, that's like all of the things that he's been telling like my friends that were in the church with me, the ones that are still supportive and talk to me and all of that. If he sees me, he's going to say this, he's going to pray for me, he's going to counsel me and say what. So they all say all of these things. They sit right there watching me entering and dancing with my wife and everybody. And I, at the time we weren't married, but I told them all that it was my wife. Didn't say a word. Sat there drinking pamplemousse and like clapping his hands. I'm like, okay. So they don't see anything in your face. The bold ones would, but it takes a lot. And they say a bunch of nonsense on the internet, but
Of
nobody
course.
really.
Keyboard
Of course,
warriors.
the keyboard warriors.
I'm curious, that pastor in UB who tried to assault you, do you know if he's still there pastoring?
He died. He died a couple of years ago, or maybe a year ago. When I found out that he died, I was just like, it was mixed emotions. You know what I mean? I thought I would be jumping and celebrating the fact that he had died, but I wasn't. I was like, too bad he died. But I also found out that it wasn't just me. Like he was just a serial like rapist, and
My God.
he was protected by the church, which is ridiculous because they'll be so mad at gay people, but they are protecting rapists and child molesters amongst them,
Yeah.
which is like ridiculous. But yeah, I never. He knew that I was. I told him that I was gay. He probably saw some of the things that I said about him on my Facebook because there were people in my DM saying, "This is a man of God, Sirry, be really careful." Somebody gave me 7 days if I didn't take down my post, which was like maybe 10 years ago. Those 7 days came and passed. Like God would strike me if I didn't take it down. But
Whenever
Wow.
people say that, I'm always quick to remind them that fornication is also a sin, in case we're out here calling
They forget
sins
that one.
like, I'm like, because I know you's a hoe. I remember you when you were in the
Yeah.
streets. I had to do that. I dragged somebody one day where I'm usually not very feisty or things, but every now and again I have moments, and they were being really homophobic and I did not like it. When I tell you that I went full nuclear, I took everything from, bitch, you wear polyester, and I'm pretty sure Leviticus said you shouldn't wear mixed fabrics. I said you fornicating because I remember when you was a hoe out there, and just like
yeah,
she had nothing. Then she started like
It's a
trying to
cherry
backtrack, but
picking.
she wanted to backtrack.
Yeah,
But I'm like,
it's
yeah,
a cherry picking that I can't stand.
let's not do that. Like we all sinners, and no sin is bigger than the other one. So
like if you're going to say that something is a sin, then be consistent. And also, I may not like your religion is not mine. Like if
Hello.
this is a sin, look, like if this is your religion, I'm not tied to your religion. Is to guide your life. It's not to guide my own life. So if like in your religion this is a sin, this is that, then don't do it. Let your religion prevent you from doing it. Your religion should not provide rules for you to guide another person's life. I'm not your religion, and me are not. We don't. I'm not part of it. So that to me was just like, if you're going to go with something is a sin, be consistent with the sins that are all listed in the Bible that you believe in. Like do your Bible word for word. But also, what if I don't share your religion? What's it concern me in your religion? How is it guiding my life?
Exactly. So back to the US, right? Obviously I'm sure from all of our perspectives here, we're in a very hostile political landscape in the US. There are, threats of rolling back. The Supreme Court just ruled something about trans rights, and they're threatening the people who have proposed like rolling back legalization of gay marriage. So I think that anybody, whatever fear like a queer person or a person of color has in America, it's not unfounded. Like it's not unrealistic to think that this administration would attempt or maybe even be successful at, like clawing back rights. So my question is, we're only 6 months in, or on the precipice of World War III. People have been laid off. Only 6 months. We have 3.5 years left. So how do we resist? Like from a queer, standpoint, how do we resist for those 3.5 years and beyond?
I think I often think that we use our different privileges for we don't all work in privilege, and we also don't all work in marginalization. You could be privileged in one aspect and marginalized in another. And so when it comes to LGBTQ rights, like people who are straight, people who are cisgender, I think this is an opportunity for them to really unequivocally be supportive of the rights of people to speak out about it, but also to be supportive of people who are queer, to be there, to listen, to be empathetic, to realize that shit is really happening. To be the kinds of people that, would you be able to lay down your life for a queer person? Would you be able to hide a queer person inside of your house? We all have these ideas of if I existed during Jim Crow, if I lived, during slavery, and I would be able to hide people who are running away, I'll be able to hide, enslaved people who have escaped. Well, this is your time to be able to actually be able to live that. Like, if you existed during the Holocaust, would you protect? This is your time to think about people whose rights are systematically being stripped away, and how you can protect them, and how you can be there for them, and how you can be a space where they can confide in. I think, to me, it's just making people know that, you are a community of resistance. And for queer people, I think, and for all of us really, is what do you need to do to keep you safe, to keep you alive, to make you able to resist. I think sometimes we tire ourselves with a lot of things. And part of this oppression is actually to tire us, to prevent us from experiencing joy and peace and good health. And so when we are missing all of those things, we cannot fight back. So I think doing things that really restore our strength and really rebuild us and connect us with people, like I'm talking about intergenerational, trans-systemic collaborations across different systems with different kinds of people, interracial, like collaborations that are really meaningful. I also think that just being present, they want you to hide, right? They want people like me to hide. They want all of us to go back to shithole countries. But really being present and having pride in your own contributions. Like, we make the world better. We make this place better. We have meaningful contributions. We make meaningful contributions to this country. And really being able to sit back and look at that and be aware of that and be proud of that and actually engage in that is important. One of the things that you guys do very well, I don't need to say to you, but to your audience, is having these conversations. It really matters for our collective awareness about what is going on. One of the things that really pains me, I see just a lot of Cameroonians specifically, but Black immigrants in general, being extremely homophobic, extremely racist, support things that are just, that are harmful to them. And it's really, really sad. And so, like, having these conversations that expose the ways in which, when one of us is being harmed, that collectively it's eroding our own collective rights is important. Because sometimes people don't know. And these conversations help people know. But again, I would say, like, for me, the first thing is people with power, people with privilege. I am a cisgender person. And so I use that cisgender privilege to really support my trans siblings, and I assume and I expect that people who are straight would use their straight privilege to support queer people like me. I assume that my white colleagues, my male colleagues, would use their race and gender privilege to speak up against harms that are done to people who are marginalized. If you think about the women's rights movement in the US, or disability rights movement, or even voters' rights for Black people, it wasn't Black people that voted so that they can be able to vote. It wasn't women that voted. You know what I mean? So it's like people who have privilege in those areas should really, really, this is the time for them to really, really speak up. Like, this is the time where it actually really matters the most. I know that, like, most of us, it's easier for us to, like, speak up, when it's easier, when we are with like-minded people. But I think practicing to speak up when you're with people who are actually not share your point of view, I think that is when it matters the most for you to speak up. And that is when that courage actually becomes really important. So I just encourage people to speak up. I encourage people to continue to fight. They are going to come for you one day. Your rights may not be on the chopping block right now, but I guarantee you it would be. That's what fascism does. And just being able to build coalitions, interracial, intergenerational, multidisciplinary, multi-sector, global coalitions is important. And be present, like, know what's going on. Sometimes I just say to myself, I don't really want to know because it's stressful. And that is good, do things to protect your mental health, but also know what the bullet is, where it's coming from. Be aware of that's like my, I that's for me, like, on a sort of a surface level, that's how I function in terms of resistance. I try to be present, and I also try to just support people in my immediate network that need support. There are a lot of Cameroonians now, like, some of them undocumented, some of them gay, some of them, worried about what it means. I, again, thinking about, for me personally, I think about how can I be supportive of them in this place with my own like resources or privileges that I have on different levels. Because of course, the marginalization that I face on different levels doesn't I also have privilege in a lot of levels. And I think about how I can use that to be supportive. And just for those of us who are US citizens, like, engage in the political process, participate. Don't you stay in the place that shapes your day-to-day life. Don't not know what's going on. Like, engage in sort of the civic duty and engage in conversations that really matter.
Agree. I think that at least in the Cameroonian community, not everybody, but there's this sense that, oh, if you get wealthy enough, then you'll be shielded from certain things, which is, I mean, I'm sure it's true in certain aspects, but like you said, like, when the people whose rights they're coming for now, it's not going to stop there. It won't end there.
In George, we watched a judge. I mean, how privileged can you be you're a judge in the United States and you get a sitting judge and you get arrested? So it's not, it can only shield us to a certain level. We can only be protected from fascism to a certain level.
Agree. So, I mean, closing thoughts, right, into the Cameroonian community, you said that, you like the people who are very curious, right, who, ask questions respectfully, of course. So, yeah, I think I would, agree with that sentiment. Like, it's better, to ask respectfully if you have questions. But how do we continue to drive these conversations? Because to your point, I don't want to be talking in an echo chamber, because I want the community to have a shift. How do we drive these conversations about being accepting in our community?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a person who's queer and you are safe coming out, you should. If you're safe, that's the caveat. People just need to know that gay people are not magicians with two heads and two arms. It's your sisters, it's your aunties, it's the people that you spend time with on a day-to-day basis. These are the people that you know and love already. I guarantee you, to every Cameroonian listener, a gay person. They are in your life. They just haven't been able to tell you, and it's like being that space for them. So that's one. I think the other thing is like conversations like this, right? Like, also, like, on good days when I'm feeling it, I respond to, when like Kiki Brandy in the UK, when she posted her like wedding pictures and she had all of the homophobia and people, and the Bansot people wrote a letter to, like, they put out a statement to disown her and all of that. Like, yes, they put out a statement. Bansot people, even the ones living in Europe, like, I don't even understand how you can claim your colonizers in all kinds of ways and disown one of your own. And they put out a collective statement, the Bansot People Development Organization or whatever, disowning her, say she's not. Under all of those posts, on good days, I spend my time responding. Some of the responses were a little catty, but some of it was like, I'm going to people who ask legitimate questions. I spend time answering those questions. And sometimes people hear, sometimes they don't hear. But I think one of the biggest things that have worked is just the people who are visible just being visible. And like, if you can be visible, be visible. If you cannot be visible, do not protect your life and your peace. But if you can, it's really important. That's what really shifted sort of the LGBT movement here in the US is pride, is when people, understood that these are not people that are trying to harm you or kill you. This could be your child. This is your brother. This is your sister. I think that that's important. I know that you're wrapping up, but I want to say something, because I know that there are people who are listening, who are in the closet, and there are people who just don't know what, like, I mean, I was one of those people. Like I said, I never knew that it was possible for me to ever come out and have accepting parents and live my life. So if you're listening, if you're an LGBTQ plus sibling, especially if you're a Cameroonian, just know that you're not alone. As a woman, and we know how the patriarchy works in Cameroon, as a woman that was raised in a very male dominated, woman abusing, marriage celebrating, because if you're not married, because thing in Cameroon where they ask you about somebody and the immediate response is they are now married, like that means everything. Marriage celebrating, gay hating environment that I grew up with, who has been out now, I would say, for 17 years that I've actually been out. When I started telling people, not necessarily my family, but I've been out as a person who's been in these spaces who has married a woman, divorced a woman, dated many women, currently remarried to a woman. You're not alone. I just want you to know that you're not alone, that you are loved. I love you as a fellow Cameroonian gay person, and you're whole. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're enough. You may not have had my parents. You may not have the community that I have. You may not have the resources that I have. You may not have the literally luck that I've had, but you have me. Like, reach out to me, send me an email, enter my DMs on Blue Sky, on Facebook. And I really mean this wholeheartedly. You're not alone. You could be going through so much. You could be scared of your life. You could be scared about your safety, but still know that you're not alone. You are strong. You are enough. Even when it feels lonely, you're not alone. Even when it feels like there's nothing you can do, you're not alone. It is also perfect for you to come out when you feel like you can invite other people into your truth. It is also perfect for you not to come out. But I want you to know that you belong everywhere, that you do belong, and that you have ancestors. Okay, there are gay Cameroonian ancestors. We didn't originate gay, because people say, oh, you're going to be out, and then other people will see you, and then you're going to turn them gay. Like, who the hell turned me gay in Bamenda? Like, I didn't see no gay person in Damukon Street when I was growing up to have turned me gay. You are who you are, and you do have ancestors across space and across time. And you have people like me and a lot of other people who will do everything to support you and keep you safe. So hold on. Like, you're not alone. You are beautiful, and your life is beautiful. And I don't want to enter my preacher mode, but I do want to let you know that you're enough and that you're not alone. That it's okay for you to be in the closet. It's also okay for you to come out. Just know that you have support across space and time and realm. So that's just all that I want to say specifically to gay Cameroonians that are struggling.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, I'll echo that. I've said before on this podcast that one of my goals for this year, which I failed in 2025, was that I wanted to host like an African Pride event in Houston. This is Pride weekend, and I'm not hosting the event because I could not connect. I couldn't connect with enough people to put something together. So next year, I mean, yeah, this is a call, like, to all the queer Cameroonians, Africans, let yourselves be known. Let's come together in community. This podcast, obviously, we do support, you, and we want to get to know you. And yeah, that's one of my goals, and I must accomplish that goal.
I'm strongly in support. I'm strongly in support of that goal. And I'm very connected to African queer people and also to Cameroonian queer people, both in the US and in Europe. And also quite a few of them in Ghana, Nigeria, and South Africa. And I've always said to myself, we have to do a convening and a celebration. So I'm completely in support of that goal. And I also want to thank you, Inanga, for the platform and for the work that you do. When you had asked what people can do, I said people should use their areas in which they experience privilege. And you have been using your heterosexual privilege to speak up on behalf of marginalized, queer, LGBT Cameroonians and LGBT people in the US in general. And thank you for that, for doing that. I think that that's, again, part of how we achieve our collective freedoms. So thank you.
I'm actually dating a woman. Just FYI, I have a girlfriend.
I didn't know that, but I'm very excited to hear that. And
yeah.
And I know it's also not easy because as a queer person who has been out for about 17 years, every day I feel like I get to come out to someone. And every day I get to negotiate. Somebody calls me and I'm talking about something that's broken in the house, and somebody said, would you be able to make this decision on your own, or do you make it with your husband? And I say, actually, it's a wife. It's, those moments of how you have to constantly come out, and sometimes it's like, I still have to do this, but I'm happy to hear that.
The world is very heteronormative, and you don't realize it until you're like, why is this person making that assumption? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's extremely heteronormative. There was a time in my life where I actually assumed, and I did that on purpose to piss off my heterosexual colleagues that always assumed that everybody was heterosexual. And somebody said, yeah, I have to go take my wife and kids to a movie. And I was like, what? And he said, I have to take my wife and kids to a movie. And I'm like, You have a wife? I thought you had a husband. I didn't know you were straight. Oh my God. And they were kind of like looking at me. I said, you hear how that sounds? That's how it sounds. Like when I say something about my wife and you're looking at me sideways because you didn't know, you made an assumption. And I just made the assumption about you. So this is to say that, like, this is how we continue to sort of unlearn these heteronormative kind of values, that norms that we have in our society, especially as Africans.
Yeah, agree. All right. Well, to our audience, just a reminder, our June book of the month is These Letters End in Tears by Musi Teji Xavier. I don't know if you've read that book. She's Cameroonian. It's a queer story. It's really, really good. You'll cry.
I have to read it then.
Yes, it's really good. These Letters End in Tears, and I think you'll enjoy it because it's based in Bamenda. The protagonist, yeah, the story is happening in Bamenda. I think you'll like it. Yeah. Okay.
I'm right now.
Good. And all right, we always end with a proverb. So our proverb today is, he who digs a grave for his enemy might as well be digging one for himself. So what's your interpretation of that?
Man, he who digs a grave for his enemy might as well be digging one for himself. Because if you're digging a grave for your enemy, you're planning something to harm your enemy. You can harm yourself. You can harm people who are close to you, people who you love and care about. That's my interpretation.
Yeah, and my interpretation, I was thinking about like the current political landscape. It's like you think you're voting against somebody else's interests. You might actually be voting against your own self-interest at the end of the day. So, choose wisely where you put your energy and your votes.
Indeed.